Hi everyone.
Hello.
I'm Maisha Seth and I'm going to be moderating this round table. Firstly, can we just introduce ourselves? Angel, why don't you start?
I'm Angel.
I'm Nia.
I'm Dea.
I'm Gul.
I'm Sachi.
I'm Ayushka.
I'm Anushka.
And I'm Rajas.
Okay, moving on. I would like to say to begin with, I'm glad we got to work together over the last few weeks dissecting media content, consuming the media content and making our own meanings out of it.
Likewise.
Yeah.
So, starting with the round table, the structure of this round table is going to go like this. A person is going to go and tell what their key takeaway was. Others will ask them questions and then so for the discussion.
Yeah.
I'll start at the very beginning. We begun the session with Code. I think it's fair to say that Code caught a lot of us off guard. It wasn't fast, dramatic, or had the entertainment we wanted. Code forced us to sit through discomfort, and in doing so, it brought out some really important themes. One of the big things Code showed us was how deeply caste, class, gender inequalities are embedded into both legal system and society at large. Whether it was Narayan Kamble, a Dalit folk singer accused with the very little real evidence, or the way Code officials casually overlooked systemic injustice, like when they asked a girl to leave because of what she was wearing. Another powerful aspect of this was how silence was portrayed in the film, the long cuts, the finishing shots. Like when the bus was moving, the shot kept going, or at the lawyer's office.
Correct.
Narayan Kamble's music, his songs weren't just background, they were resistance. His performance brought in voices, histories that are usually ignored. The contrast between his powerful lyrics and the sterile courtroom evidence about those whose voices get heard in society and those who don't. So for me, Code set the tone for the whole course. It made me realize that media isn't just about stories, it's about structures, voices, and silences. And sometimes it's not made to entertain us.
Wait, Moisha, what does Code offer me as the audience?
Okay, so let me change the question a little bit. Code was made by Chaitanya Tamane. Why do you think he made it? He made it so he could elaborate on the issues that weren't spoken about enough. Maybe Code's intention behind making Code wasn't to entertain us. It was to bring forward issues that we weren't seeing. So what was mind-blowing to me was that this was a movie that wasn't made for a blockbuster, a hit, or a box office. So that was never really thought about how movies could be made different from the ideal reason of it.
You mentioned how the films feel almost like a documentary. Do you think Chaitanya Tamane chose that style to make a point about the legal system, or was it more about reflecting a life?
I think it was more about reflecting life because we see life in not uncut clips. We see life till the last minute. So I think it was a way of showing realism and how life actually is, and to obviously make us feel that discomfort and make us feel uncomfortable.
You mentioned that this movie does not follow a basic structure like other movies. So I would like to talk about structuralism. Structuralism is one of those theories that really make you rethink how we understand things. Structuralism says that nothing has meaning of its own. It only makes sense because of the system it's part of. Like a word means something only because of its difference from other words in the language. In media, it's super interesting. Structuralists would say that any show, ad, or movie isn't just entertainment. It's built using signs, codes, and conventions that we're already familiar with. Like how a villain wears black, or how a romantic scene has soft music, candlelights, etc. These patterns repeat across media and create meaning without even us realizing. For example, take a reality show, India's Got Talent. A structuralist lens would make us notice how shows format is the emotional background story, a big performance, dramatic judging, follows a fixed structure. We expect it, and that's what keeps us interested in watching it. Let me just quickly brief about semiotics as well. Semiotics is everything we create or interpret is rooted in signs and symbols. These systems shape how we think, speak, and create. But originality comes in when someone plays with those meanings. Even if we are working with a structure, the way we use it or break it a little is where originality really shows up.
Yeah, so Nia, if everything is already in a system, where do you think its originality fits in?
Originality doesn't disappear within the system, it finds power in them. System gives us language, symbols, and a structure which we need to communicate. But originality comes from how we play with those elements, twist them, challenge them. True originality isn't outside the system, it's the spark that transforms it.
Nia, you spoke about semiotics, right? Can you give an example of it?
A very evident example which we see in our daily lives is that if we see a plus sign on an ambulance, we know that the sign is about hospital. But when we see the same plus sign in a maths test, we know that it is regarding adding two things.
Yes.
It's regarding adding two things. So this makes me realize that things aren't always they seem like.
As Nia said, things aren't always what they seem like, and it goes deeper, especially in media. So media is basically everywhere. We're aware of that. Whether it's like mindlessly scrolling on Instagram or watching the news or binge watching a docu-series, whatever it is. And with all of this content flying right at us, the question that we should actually be asking is how much of it is actually giving us real useful information. Traditionally, media's job was to keep people informed, as simple as that. It gave us who, what, when, where and why. As discussed in class earlier, we tend to assume that news is showcasing important issues to us. But that's not always the case. Media just doesn't show us only the facts, it tells us how to see them. Framing can completely shift public perspective. Like, take an example, two headlines. One says farmers clash with the police, and the other one says police crack down on peaceful protesters. So it is the exact same event, but it is being showcased in two completely different ways. So the consumer has a completely different perspective of it. Like you can take Delhi Crime on Netflix. That is not just entertainment. It brought to limelight a real case that needed attention. So it's not just the news that informs us now. It's movies, TV shows, even stand-up specials that inform us. And news is getting flashier. So it feels like, we're trying to entertain, even in news, we're trying to entertain more than we are trying to inform. Like, celebrity trials, they get more attention than like floods or let's say wildfires. And as discussed in class in the second worksheet, it's really important for us as media students to be aware and study media properly because there's so much content and we have to filter out, we have to stay sharp and we have to filter out the noise and the important issues.
Even I have a question for you. Can entertainment media actually inform people?
See, it can, but definitely with limits. It gives us a brief, but it doesn't go in depth as it is.
I also wanted to ask a question. What's the harm in sensationalism?
See, it grabs the viewer's attention, but it often distorts the truth, which is the real issue here. So, sensational headlines can be like misleading, they can stir up fear, or they can even distract the audience from what is the actual important issue.
Yeah, so that brings me to my topic, which is media performance discourse with respect to the India's Got Latent controversy. I'm sure all of you must have heard about it, and it's sparked a lot of discussion in class as well. So, media performance discourse revolves around evaluating how effectively various media outlets, from traditional news outlets to modern digital spaces, fulfill their expected societal roles. India's Got Latent is a YouTube-based talent show hosted by Samirana, aimed at showcasing hidden talents. What was meant to be a light-hearted show quickly escalated into a national controversy, sparking legal complaints and social media outrage. While the media has an obligation to report significant events, it appears that this incident was sensationalized beyond proportion by news outlets more focused on driving engagement than clicks and than on responsible journalism. As the fourth pillar of democracy, the media is expected to uphold civic values and serve the public interest. It should act as a responsible watchdog, highlighting issues that genuinely affect society. In this controversy, many felt that the media did not fulfill its democratic duties, instead contributing to the chaos rather than offering balanced reporting. While I believe it's important for the media to report on significant incidents, there is a fine line between informing and inflaming. In this case, that line appears to have been crossed. News outlets seem to prioritize clicks, views, and virality over responsible journalism. The controversy was amplified disproportionately, reflecting a shift towards sensationalism than thoughtful media reporting.
So, Gul, I have a question for you. So, how does media performance discourse apply to the India's Got Latent controversy?
See, media performance discourse evaluates how effectively media fulfills its societal roles, such as informing, educating, and entertaining. In this controversy, news media arguably failed to maintain a balanced approach. Instead of fostering meaningful discourse, it amplified the controversy, turning a single event into a national scandal. This raises concerns whether Indian media prioritizes sensationalism over responsible journalism.
Girl, as you mentioned about the fourth pillar of democracy, what does the phrase fourth pillar of democracy imply in the controversies context?
See, the phrase fourth pillar of democracy refers to the media's role in upholding democratic values while informing the public and holding power accountable. However, in this case, the media's handling of the situation raises doubts about whether it fulfilled this duty responsibly or if it just prioritized engagement over ethical journalism.
That's great. Lastly, I would like to ask a question on as to how did the controversy surrounding India's Got Latent escalate beyond its original scope?
See, the controversy first began with an inappropriate comment made by a panelist, but it quickly escalated due to legal complaints and social media outrage. Instead of remaining a contained issue within the show's audience, news outlets amplified the incident, making it a nationwide debate. The media's role in driving the controversy suggests an emphasis on sensationalism over measured reporting. Instead of addressing the controversy in a nuanced, general manner, many outlets focus on clickbait-driven narratives, escalate in outrage rather than facilitating constructive discussions.
Thank you, Gul. Now that I think about it, humor is also a part of it. Humor, through stand-up comedy, is a powerful part of social culture and popular culture. It helps common people speak against social rules, political power, unfair systems, often in a funny but bold way. We know that humans can express things that others are too scared to say out loud, right? Through jokes and satire, comedians reflect what society is really thinking. Stand-up isn't always polite. It is bold, sarcastic, and often direct. It confronts power, makes fun of serious topics, and uses controversial language to get a reaction. Now, additionally, sometimes comedians become countercultural voices when they talk about taboo subjects or make fun of things people avoid talking. Now, as we know the case of Kunal Kamra, which was also discussed in class, that Kunal Kamra's political jokes and social media posts led to backlash from political party named Shiv Sena. His boldness in speaking out reflects how comedy can be a threat to power, especially when it mocks authority figures. Right? Now, TV shows, memes, reels, they don't just entertain, they reflect real social problems like unemployment, casteism, sexism, or even corruption. Media becomes a mirror of reality through humor. When people see comedians talking about politicians, social problems, new trends, they start forming opinions based on that. Media influences how people think, especially youth. Now, here's the question. Who gets to joke? What kind of humor is considered good or bad? This reflects deep inequalities. Some comedians face backlash or target caste or gender privilege, while others stay protected. Now today, humor is not just expression, it's business. Comedians sell tickets, brand deals, OTT shows. This makes us ask, is it still authentic or just what sells?
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
I think you mentioned the Kunal Kamra case, right?
Right.
I think you said when there's a question raised on the politicians or the normal structure of things, often it's like a stand-up comedian or someone else. What is the audience doing then? What was the audience's response to the Kunal Kamra case?
Well, the audience was passive, though it should not have been. The reaction should have been the audience should have supported Kamra's case and it should have supported Kamra's freedom of expression on his views. However, it was the exact opposite and he faced backlash and online abuse as well.
Like how Anushka spoke about, stand-up in general, that is like a resistance towards the government, which brings me to my topic, the resistant culture. It's like resistant culture has become one of the most powerful tools to question an authority, challenge injustice, and express dissent. It mostly thrives in comedy clubs, street protests, music studios, social media, cinema halls, etc., where artists, youth, and citizens push back the dominant narrative. Unlike counterculture, which rejects the mainstream completely, resistant culture works with society, calling out what's wrong in the society. One of the few examples I can give is like how she says stand-up comedy about Kunal Kamra. His satire to critique politics and media, his jokes on nationalism and press freedom, which came as a backlash to him, showing that humor can shake the system. And one more example, prime example is memes. In like today's digital age, memes have become a modern protest posters. While during elections, you'll see on Instagram, Twitter, all memes on Rahul Gandhi or Modi, etc. Through humor and irony, I feel young Indians challenge everything from hate speech to economic inequality. And why I feel resistant culture is important is because it keeps the democracy alive. And it ensures that people can question, express, and demand change without fear. Whether through art, speech, or silence, it's how the unheard find a voice. In today's India, resistance isn't just about happening on the streets. It's happening in jokes, lyrics, films, and even memes. And it's not going away anytime soon.
I had a question for you.
Yeah.
How does resistance culture maintain a check on the dominant ideologies?
I feel resistance culture helps people question those in power and by showing what's wrong or unfair in the system. So it uses, like I said, songs or like jokes or like memes to make people think about societal problems. This kind of culture makes sure that leaders don't have too much control and they are kept in check.
I had a question.
Yeah.
When does resistance culture become mainstream and does it weaken its impact?
Resistant culture becomes mainstream when its themes and symbols are widely accepted or commercialized. This can happen when large corporations, media industries, or political groups co-opt resistance movements for profit or like popularity. Like for example, films like Rang De Basanti or Article 15 highlight political and social resistance. However, when Bollywood puts such narratives out, it sometimes softens or romanticizes the struggles what they are going through, making them more palatable for the mass audience rather than call for real action. And one more prime example can be the farmers' protests in 2020-2021, where protests against the new agriculture farm laws. It was a resistant movement, initially dismissed as anti-national by some sections of the media. It later gained widespread support. However, the brands and the influence misused it and used that as a way to get popular and get more social media engagement.
Okay. Gul, Dea, what would be your view on how mass media and counterculture resistance take place?
So I would say there are like diverse dimensions of representation in mass media, right? So it's not just centric to one. There is identity, power, and ideologies. Now, when I say that, I can ask you guys, what does that mean? So that basically means that there are multiple ways in which media portrays people, culture, and ideas, and how these portrayals shape our understanding of the society. Correct? So when we're talking about representation in mass media, I think it's important to begin by acknowledging that media does not show us the reality. By that, I do not mean that media is fake, but it is for sure constructive. Correct? This is something Dennis Maxwell emphasizes. Media plays a central role in how social reality is produced, organized, and understood. And that construction is never neutral. It's always shaped by power and ideology. From our worksheets, one recurring theme is how representation is deeply tied to identity. Correct? Whether that's caste, gender, class, or religion. For example, in the movie that we have already spoken about, I think, Court, which we analyzed, representation is not just about who is present in the narrative. It is also about silence, language, ambiguity, and the depiction of marginalized communities. Correct? And that connects to Maxwell's idea of ideological power. The media functions ideologically by making certain ideas appear natural or common sense. Think about traditional gender roles in advertising, right? Like how women are, as usual, shown in caregiving roles or
dress beautifully for audience, right? These repetitive portrayal normalizes certain hierarchies. We also saw that in the workshop discussion about how brands like Complan or Cornetto constructs very specific aspirational identities. For example, the stereotypes: lean, fair-skinned, urban, upper middle class people, correct? It's not all top-down. As we also explore, the audience isn't passive. Stuart Hall's encoding and decoding theory helps us understand how people can resist dominant reading. For instance, meme has become a powerful tool for reinterpretation. A Bollywood scene or a political movement can be transformed into a satire, challenging the original narrative and offering alternative perspectives. This is especially relevant in the digital age where representation is more participatory but also more contested. Even social media influencers are reshaping representation. We see nowadays, right? There has been more space for Dalit people, queer people, people who were not as recognized before. But at the same time, I think algorithms still have an upper hand in social media, right? So to me, media doesn't represent, media representation operates across multiple layers, okay? It's not just about visibility, it's about who controls the narrative, what gets repeated, and whose voices are prioritized or silenced, right?
You've spoken a lot about social media, so I wanted to ask you that can social media truly democratize representation, or is it just reinforcing societal norms in a new format?
Correct. So social media does open spaces for marginalized voices, right? Like I said, Dalit people, queer people, lower caste people, they all are getting a space to show their actual talent and is getting recognized for that. But is it really happening at a large scale? Maybe not yet, but with time it might. So I can't say it does democratize people fully, but it is surely on the verge too.
Okay, so Diya, why is it that silence or absence in media representation matter as much as what is shown?
See, silence is a powerful tool of representation, correct? So what media leaves out has often more content than what it generally shows. For example, we talked about quote. For instance, the silence around the folk singer story reflects systematic ensure. When voices or perspectives are absent, the audience unconsciously observes that absence as normal. So we do not look beyond, we just consume what we see. So I think that is where silence plays a very big role.
Okay, so it reminds me of one such theory that stuck with me throughout our course, which is whether media reflects or distorts the reality, which ultimately made me question the intensity of bias that exists in Indian news. So to begin with, media bias often refers to how news content may distort reality, such as representing negative portrayals of minority groups, overlooking women's roles in society, or favoring certain political ideologies. This can happen subtly through what scholars call unwritten bias. As mentioned in our reading, it means not necessarily intentional, but deeply embedded in the structures of news production. Yeah, so key instances which keep on happening, which help us identify the bias are: news tends to amplify the voices of social and political elite, marginalizing the poor and underrepresented. Men receive more prominence than women. Ethnic minorities are frequently stigmatized and stereotyped. For example, the constant exaggeration of reporting of cases of love jihad or the case of Shraddha and Aftab that happened back in 2022, where instead of focusing on the crime, they were focusing on the religion of the culprit, which is very wrong. So now, here is the big question. Should the media reflect in a fair and proportional way? Well, it's an assumption known as the correspondence assumption, that media out to match reality closely. But scholars like Skulls and others argue that media isn't just a mirror, it filters, shapes, and sometimes even construct meaning influenced by its own structure and audiences. In conclusion, the issue isn't only that media distort reality, but it selectively reflects part of it, often those that serve the interest of the powerful. Our responsibility then is to critically engage with the content that we consume, question whose voices are to be amplified or silenced, and strive for media that informs without reinforcing inequality.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Can you refer to a real life case where the bias was very evident, in particular Indian media?
Okay, so I think you also mentioned that case and Angel also mentioned that case, and it's very prominent because the bias there was very evident. That is the coverage of the farmer movement in India. Many mainstream Hindi and English channels both, they tried to frame the farmers' protest as being hijacked by extremist elements. Instead of focusing on the policy reforms or concerns or the systematic issue faced by farmers, they were emphasizing more upon the fringe elements, which set a very distorted perception of the movement.
Correct. So one more question for you.
Yeah.
How would we distinguish, right, between intentional bias and structural or systematic bias?
See, intentional bias is very deliberate distortion, okay, or simply is pushing a particular narrative. Whereas systematic or structural bias is unconscious patterns where it is decided by newsroom demographics, economic reforms, or simply cultural norms.
Correct.
Rajesh, you've been awfully quiet throughout our discussion.
I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. I'm going to be talking about something that is everywhere. We've all seen it, we've all experienced it. It lives in our subconscious. It's advertisements.
Yes.
But have we ever stopped and thought about their true impact on our society? At its core, advertising is a powerful tool. It informs, persuades, and influences consumer behavior. It fuels economic growth, introduces us to new products, and even spreads awareness about important social issues. But not all impacts of advertisement are positive. Advertising can lead to creation of unrealistic beauty standards. It can promote materialism and sometimes use manipulative tactics to drive sales. Unlike short-term promotions or sponsorships, which boost immediate sales or brand recognition, advertising is a long-term strategy and is designed to shape consumer perceptions. And unlike public relations, which builds brand reputation through earned media, advertising gives the control of the message in the hands of the producer. In today's digital age, advertising has become more personalized and at times intrusive. Algorithms track our behavior, showing us ads that influence our choices, often without us realizing it. While this helps businesses reach the right consumer base, it often leads to the rise of ethical concerns. And it also raises concerns about privacy and manipulation. So what's the solution, you ask? Regulation, responsible advertising and consumer awareness. Businesses must balance creativity with ethics. And as consumers, we must make informed choices rather than blindly following the messages that we see. Advertisements shape our world. Let's ensure they do so responsibly.
So Rajesh, do you think advertising should be more strictly regulated?
Personally, I think that advertising should be more regulated than it already is. However, a negative impact that regulation has is that the creativity element of the advertising gets minimized. So we need to find a middle ground where the consumer side is also heard and the producer side is also heard.
Now I have a question, Rajesh. How do you think advertisement is different from PR, promotion and sponsorship?
So as I said before, sponsorship and the promotions are mostly short-term goals. They're done to drive sales. Advertising is more of a long-term game. And what distinguishes PR from ads is that advertising, the message being shown is in the hands of the business or the organization that is paying for the advertisement. Whereas in PR, it is indirectly placed. So the person that they've put in charge of the PR is the person who's in charge of the message and not the organization directly.
Is that it for everyone? Do we have any more questions for Rajesh?
No, thank you.
Okay, so we'll move forward to concluding it. And again, like to begin with saying, it was a great pleasure to work with all of you. Over the last few weeks, we watched content, analyzed it, discussed over it, agreed over it, disagreed over it.
Quite a lot of times.
Yes. So let's do one thing. Let's do one final round of one line. Everyone will say what was their key takeaway from the media content review course.
Okay.
I started last time, so I'm going to go with Raja starting now.
Yeah, sure. So my key takeaway was that advertising is more than just selling. It impacts our society, it impacts how we as consumers behave, and we need to analyze it and study it further for the benefit of the society and in turn ourselves.
Correct.
That's great. I think my opinion here and what I learned mainly was that dominant ideologies are the ideas that ruling class people wants us to believe. However, people nowadays do have the right to express their views and show the flaws in government, religion or tradition.
Ayushka?
Yeah, so the most important thing that I learned from this course is that media not only shapes and filters but also constructs reality without us even realizing it.
Sachi?
What stood out to me is something that I found very intriguing. It's the fact that we blindly trust in news, but what news might be focusing on is not the real thing that we should be focusing on. So that was my key takeaway.
Gul?
So I believe that in the age of rapid misinformation and constant content consumption, our discussions have taught us to become more responsible as both creators and consumers of media.
So for me, I think that media does not always show reality, and that is the truth. Okay, so for us being a citizen, we should just not consume flashy things that are out there and put right in front of us, but we should look beyond, search beyond, and ask our whys.
Yeah. Okay.
Something which really stood out for me was how things aren't always they seem like.
Like what struck me through this course was that denotation is different from connotation, and that movies are not just entertainment but also infotainment.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'll go. I think I speak on all of our behalf when I say this will be my key takeaway. From our classes being half full about the media we're consuming, now our class is 3/4 full. So in this class we learned how to critique media and how to see it from
Our perspective.
Yes. Thank you. That's it. Thank you so much for being a part of this round table.
Thank you, everyone.